I have always been interested in how it is possible to protect life, the lives of others, in the horror of war, when the only weapon you have is compassion. And how many compassionate hearts are needed in order to fight against war, during war? 100, 1,000, 500,000? Or is 5 enough, just like those 5 were enough for the map of death? An article written in a Swedish newspaper about the Armenian massacres changes the destiny of 19-year-old Alma Johansson. She decides to become a missionary and leave for Turkey. Before the family could overcome the shock, the girl had already acquired the profession of nurse. In 1902, Alma's train headed to Constantinople. She was 21 years old. In 1905, the 22-year-old Maria Jakobsen was working as a nurse at the Sundby Hospital Children's Department. The offer to leave for the East was a true shock for a young girl who had visited lovely European cities. On her way to Constantinople at the Berlin station, Maria met Sister Laura, who had already been to Anatolia. Sister Laura kept looking at Maria and crying all the time. For the first time ever, Maria realized what was ahead of her in Asia Minor. Maria Jakobsen was 24 years old. This is the house in Haapsalu, Estonia, where Hedvig Büll was born. She belonged to a German-speaking family. Hedvig was his 4th daughter and different from the others. Hedvig Büll traveled to distant Silesia to work as a teacher in the German orphanage in Marash. In 1902, at the private Ordrup Grammar School where Karen Jeppe studied and worked, the headmaster Frieser read aloud to the teachers an article about distant Caucasus. This article was written by Åge Meyer Benediktsson. He ended his talk by a cry for help passed on from an old Armenian. And this very call took Karen to Armenia. Karen took the road to Urfa. She was 27 years old. I was walking on the central street of Kragerö, which was often walked on by Bodil Björn. Here we see an inscription which states that this building has belonged to the wealthy Björn family. In 1871, Bodil was born into this very family. Thus, our 5 heroines became eyewitnesses to the Armenian massacres in Ottoman Turkey and caregivers to Armenian orphans. In 1915, according to Maria Jakobsen's diary, 13 missionaries died in the territory of Turkey. Nevertheless, the missionaries stayed in the country as long as possible. The war had ended. Thus our heroines left Turkey, which they called the country of blood and tears, having saved hundreds of refugees, thousands of orphans and women. Like the Armenians, the people they cared for, our heroines became deportees. In Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Germany and Estonia, far away from war and suffering. They didn't find rest, they didn't find themselves. Hoping they would find at least one of their little orphans, or in some way would help the migrants rescued in the deserts, they decide to return. Hedvig Bill spent her last years in this home for retired missionaries in Waldwimmersbach near Heidelberg. The staff here knew the residents very well, but they were so surprised when on her deathbed, Hedvig started to speak a language they couldn't recognize. It was Armenian, a language she had learned while working among Armenians